Alright, so we have Nessus installed. What we're going to need to do now is move ourselves back into a host-only environment. Extremely important. We're not going to run Nessus scans against any public IP addresses, and to confirm that we're not reaching those addresses, we jump back into a host-only. So as you can see, I'm not in there as of yet because I can still ping outside. So what I will do is cancel that. I'm going to go to my VMware player. I'm going to go Manage, Virtual Machine Settings. Come over here and change this down to host only. Hit OK. Remember, you can, first, just to show you, it should drop us off. We should be unable to connect with the outside, but just to make sure, I'm going to come back, run service networking restart. I'm going to confirm that the Nessus service is running. If you have stopped, shut down this system, or if you just changed to the host only and did a reboot, you are going to need to run this service Nessus D start. Our service should already be running, so this is not going to do much for us. As you can see there, Nessus service is already running, process number 4265. Alright, so what is Nessus? Nessus is basically a scanner that will not only identify targets, but it's going to use a plugin which determines what type of scans we're actually going to run. They will vary based on the type of host or targets that we have in front of us that we're pursuing or going after. We also can determine when we run these scans what type of vulnerabilities exist on the systems that we locate and find. These can also be done for compliance checks and such. If you want to confirm that we don't have a particular administrator password on any systems, you can tell this Nessus scanner to use this credential, hit this IP range, see if you can gain access to any systems with this credential. That's just a small example. There are tons of things you can do with Nessus. I encourage you to look at the Nessus Manual, which is located, it's a PDF that you can get offline. It is located in our lab manual. I would suggest you go up there and take a look. But again, make sure you are in a host-only environment. So your ping, network should be unreachable, and that's a good sign. Now, if you remember the IP address of your targets, you can ping those guys, and you can see that we are now able to communicate with them. If they are not up and running for you because you've shut them down, start them back up. Once they are up and running, perform this ping and make sure that you're able to communicate with them and reach them. Now, this is not going to be a Nessus class. I'm simply introducing you to the tool. We'll start Iceweasel up. Should be able to choose this drop down list right here and have localhost 8834 available to us. Root. Tor, that's what I use for mine. Hit sign in. Service is already running. I should be there and good to go. Now, if you've not selected for this to not show again, you'll get this every time you log in. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it this go around. Now, your first location that you'll get dumped into is the scans folder. You're not going to be able to run a scan, however, until you have some kind of policy in place that you're going to use to scan from. So what you'll end up having to do here is if you start a new scan, you'll probably get warned that you need a policy. So we'll hit continue. It's going to dump us over here in a policy environment. We click new policy and it says, hey, what kind of scan are you going to run? We have a lot of different options underneath here. Some require a subscription, some do not. We're going to run a basic scan. Host discovery is kind of similar to what we did with Nmap, but we're going to run an actual scan this go around. We want to name it something. I'm going to call it ITS 2500 Lab 3C. The visibility for this is based on user accounts. Private is fine. Description here, I'm just going to call it Lab 3C Scan. Allow post scan report editing. Sure, it's not a problem. It's not going to mess anything up for us. Inside this area here, we're going to leave it as an internal scan. Authentication method, we'll leave it as Windows, which is fine. We will enable the administrator shares during the scan. If we had username or passwords that we might have compromised, we may be able to use those inside here, or a particular domain that's required to maybe gain access to some shares and such. Yeah, a few options in here. It's kind of cool. Authentication methods, Windows or SSH. We'll leave it at Windows for now. I'll hit save, and you can see that we have a policy established. Now that we have a policy, we will be able to actually create a scan. So at that point, we can come over here and select a scan. If you want to add additional policies, you can do so. Here's your tabs up here to jump back and forth. So at this point, we can go ahead and start a new scan now that we have a policy created. I'm going to name this ITS 2500 Lab 3C. Initial scan of our targets. We have a policy associated to it. We're going to keep the output into our folder for our My Scans, and here I'm going to select, you can go this route to select just the couple targets of interest. You can also specify the entire subnet range, and here you have the option of actually uploading targets. Let's say you did a scan previously and you found some targets of interest. You can place those into a text file and find and upload here for your scan. I'm going to go ahead and launch. You'll see this guy's going to kick off. This is our taskbar. This tells us what's going on with Nessus right now. We see we have a scan running. We can pause this scan, stop this scan. This shows us when it was last modified. As this is scanning, if you click on this title here, you'll actually come in here and you'll be able to check out some results. You'll see when we scan that entire range, so we're pulling that VM address up again. This is us. This is our attack system here, and these are our two target systems. We got some critical ones, which is really good to see. That's what we want to see. Here's something that's interesting though to keep in mind. This is our attack system. There was a recent vulnerability that was disclosed with OpenSSL, and we click here. There's actually shows as a vulnerability on our attack system. So that's where that distro upgrade comes into play that we talked about in our earlier labs, where we want to keep our attack system current. We want to make sure that it is patched. Another thing to keep in mind here, we're using the home version of Nessus. The home version is actually limited to 10 IP addresses. So we couldn't grab the home version and go scan our entire network range at work to see what we get. You have to actually pay for the product if you want to use it to its full extent and to get use of all of the plugins and such. Alright, so we're about 25 minutes. The scan is completed. Let's jump in, take a look at the scan. Some of these addresses are going to look familiar. All of them should after our Nmap scan, but we know a couple we're not interested in. You notice we still have some results that showed up from those. Those are simply informationals, as you can see over here from our chart. There's low, medium, high, and critical results that could come out of these scans as well. Critical, that's what we want. Those are ones that are probably easily exploitable right there. High, that's something you definitely need to be concerned with. Medium, low, maybe with a little bit of work. Then your informationals just provide you some basic information. To actually jump in and look at one of these targets and the results, I'll pick the .130, and you'll see what some of these criticals and highs and mediums mean. So check this out. Critical, VNC server, password as a password. That's something we need to keep in mind. You can gain a shell remotely simply by exploiting this device on the VNC port, connecting to it with something like X-type VNC or something like that, and then using password as the credentials to get into it. So that's pretty bad, but if we select one of these, it gives you a description and a solution around fixing and repairing that. Some of the risk information. Look at the score here. The scores come in play because they tell you exactly how critical of a problem this will be on the system. What exactly it falls in terms of a family here. What are the results if we try to exploit it? And this is cool as well. You can grab where this reference information is actually coming from. CVE as an example. If we click on that, we're going to get a dead site because you got to remember we are disconnected right now from the internet. But if we come down here and we right click and we copy the link location, we actually have the ability to come over here, open a browser. This is on my host station, not on my VM, and we can paste that in and see from the National Vulnerability Database some of the information that's released around this. So that's pretty helpful. You can do that for any of these. Again, right click, copy the link location, head to your host machine where you will still have an internet connection, paste it in your browser, see what you can find about it. This section right here with the plugin details that we looked at briefly earlier, keep in mind that this is the plugins that we are using from Nessus that we downloaded initially. So without the correct plugin, this vulnerability may not have been identified, which is why it's important to keep your plugins up to date prior to doing any scans. Let's go ahead and jump back to this host again, and let's see if we can find some other information in here. This is kind of cool and what I wanted to show you. So I picked this VS FTPD service, and you can see that it shows you what you can actually exploit it with. And we are going to exercise this. What you're going to want to do is to search through these targets that we have and the results that come up, and do a little research on a couple of the vulnerabilities that you find of interest. This will probably be a good one for you to look into, since we will be exploiting it. It'll help you understand what we're doing later. As well as, when you look over here, check this one out, MS08067, because we will be exploiting that one as well. Finally, what you will want to do for submission is come up here to export, and you will export this as a PDF file. Here's what you have available to export, and here's what will be exported. At this time, we're exporting nothing. Grab, drag, and drop. That's all you have to do. Tell it to export. It's going to download the file, and then we're going to go retrieve it. You drag and drop it to the desktop of your host system. You can submit it with your work for this module. It tells you right here, hey, I have this guy available for you. Go ahead and tell it you want to save the file. It's asking where. I'm going to throw it right on my desktop again, and up here is your file name. You can see that it names it from your scan name. So if you just rename it something similar to this, I'm going to hit save for the desktop. All files have finished downloading. I'll go ahead and click on this link. Here's my file, and you have the report there and available. Gives you a host summary breakdown, vulnerability breakdown, as well as the vulnerabilities listed by the host. So if we close this out, I'm going to go ahead and close Nessus out. I'm going to start here. I'm going to sign out. If you still want to look through there, which I highly encourage you to do, stay in there. Just want to come back over here and show you right on your desktop. Here's your report. Again, drag and drop, take it off of your VM system, drop it on the desktop of your host system, and you can submit that for a grade. We're going to wrap it up with Nessus. You have enough to be able to get through your labs at this point in time. Again, jump around in there. Don't just walk right through the basics that I just did. Have some fun. Get used to that tool. It's pretty powerful. It's an awesome tool to use. We'll see you on Lab 4 when we try local exploitations. Just as a note before I go, when you want to power off your virtual machines, your easy peasy and your if it ain't broke systems, we're not logged into them, so you can't really go to the shutdown window. You can here tell it to turn off and shut down your VM. This will close out. All you want to do for this guy here is select player, go to power, and tell it to shut down the guest. You can close that window out. Back here for your Kali system, from your terminal window, you simply type in power off and it will shut down for you.